What's up guys, JV2017 here, and today I wanted to discuss this whole Bethesda quest mod stealing situation that recently blew up. The first part of this video is going to be an objective look at facts and observations. This is for those that maybe aren't familiar with the situation and need to be filled in, but also to make sure that this whole thing is addressed in as fair a light as possible. In the second half, I will share my opinion on the matter, and as always, I encourage you all to share your thoughts in the comment section below once we've laid out all these facts onto the table. All of the videos, articles, and posts mentioned in this video are going to be linked in the description below for your reference. This whole thing started with a post made by Baron von Chateau on moddb.com 2 days ago, July 14th, and the title reads, "Big Publishers and a Small Mod," with the headline of, "How would you feel if a big publisher inspired itself heavily from one of your work?" Baron is a mod creator who made the Autumn Leaves Fallout New Vegas mod, which offers 7 to 10 hours of gameplay in the form of a murder mystery quest set inside of a vault. The mod includes a colorful cast of robots in charge of a forgotten vault where a mysterious murder has taken place, tasking the player to solve it. Baron released Autumn Leaves a few weeks before Fallout 4 came out last year, which again was in November. Somebody brought the recent Far Harbor DLC quest called Brain Dead, which takes place in a vault as well, to Baron's attention, citing some similarities between Baron's mod and the new quest. Specifically, that Brain Dead had similar settings, robots, and plot lines. Baron goes on to make the following set of comparisons between his mod and Brain Dead, the quest in Far Harbor. 1. Both vaults are opened by a robotic caretaker that talks to the player through the intercom. 2. The main corridors and atrium area layouts look similar. 3. A Mr. Handy leads the player to the crime scene in both of the quests. 4. The person who's murdered is the person who either built the vault or paid for it or owned it in some form or fashion. 5. The robots use voice modulators to manipulate voices, and that's part of the plot of the quest line. 6. There's a robot that you can actually romance and have robotic relations with. And 7. You discuss paintings with robots and talk about your interpretations. Baron draws these comparisons and believes that Bethesda played Autumn Leaves and drew inspiration from it for Far Harbor. He says that's perfectly okay, since the inspiration for his mod came from several other works of fiction, and being influenced is part of the natural creative process. Baron continues by asking if modders should get industry recognition or compensation for their work, and also, how could free content versus paid content be managed in this kind of atmosphere? Baron also says he made the post to raise awareness for his own mod, since Braindead is a similar quest in Far Harbor, and he didn't want players to just skip over his quest because of the similarities. He ends his post by suggesting that if players like Brain Dead, they should play Autumn Leaves since it features, quote, entirely different themes, different writing, different music, and different voice acting. Once again, this is all coming from the guy who made the mod. He is saying that they have entirely different components in these aspects, but then again, there are some similarities that he found. Shortly afterwards, somebody made a YouTube video on the issue and tweeted it at Pete Hines, the VP of PR Marketing at Bethesda, to which Pete replied, "It's a complete coincidence, but you seem inclined to see what you want." And I think the reason he responded like that is because a lot of people were obviously jumping on him. He gets a lot of the flack, and the community has been critical of Bethesda lately, what with PS4 mods and Workshop DLC in general. But someone also tweeted at Pete, but it was deleted. The original tweet was deleted, but Pete responded to another tweet saying someone else had mentioned it. I asked a few designers that would know, and none of them have heard of this mod. And I have to guess the original tweet has something to do with Autumn Leaves. We don't know what it is, but Pete clearly says that he asked a few designers and they hadn't heard of it before. Pete has also responded to several other tweets defending Bethesda Game Studios from those calling them lazy or accusing them of stealing the work of modders. So it's safe to say that Bethesda's current position, according to Pete Hines, is that a few designers said they hadn't previously heard of the mod Autumn Leaves from New Vegas when asked, and that it's a complete coincidence. So that's the best general rundown of everything that's happened so far that I could give you guys. Those are all just facts and observations. There's no spin or anything on that. That's just, what we have on the table so far. But if you look into this issue further, you're bound to find, Fallout-related subreddits with a ton of posts and threads just condemning Bethesda for stealing this mod and just repurposing it for one quest inside of their $25 Far Harbor DLC pack. And so there's a lot of stuff going on right now. I just wanted to make sure that we have all the facts in front of us before we kind of dissect this. But before we dive into my opinion on the matter, I wanted to share my general experience with each quest and what I found to be similar between the two. I decided to play them back to back, and I started with Autumn Leaves on New Vegas. I found the quest to be well voiced as far as mods go, and generally more dark, solemn, and spooky than the Far Harbor counterpart. Autumn Leaves is set in a library with a focus on how the master, who created and ran the vault, died and which of the protectrons, or computers, if any, were responsible for it. The quest asks the player to question James, Roland, Arthur, Helena, and a few other interesting characters in order to learn more about the murder. There's no amount of hand-holding, and the quest asks you to scour the entire vault searching for clues without any quest markers or much direction at all. As a result, it takes much longer to get through, and at times I got impatient and resorted to reading the walkthrough to actually find the next part. I ended up playing for about an hour before switching over to Fallout 4. In the Far Harbor DLC, Vault 118 is located underneath the Cliff's Edge Hotel. I ventured below and found a similar murder setup, but with robo-brains instead of protectrons as the characters. Dr. Ezra Parker, the owner of the hotel above ground, was murdered, and the player is asked to solve it by a Mr. Handy named Maxwell. He asks the player to investigate the crime scene and question all the residents who live there, similarly to Autumn Leaves. All the robo-brains were wealthy people who voluntarily put their brains into robots at one point inside of the vault. I did come across a similar scene where Santiago asked me what I thought of a few paintings. I could also flirt with one of the female robo-brains and engage in lewd robot relations, which is similar to what could be done with Roland in Autumn Leaves. At the conclusion of Brain Dead, I found that the murderer was concealing their voice and their identity since they were all robo-brains, which is similar to the voice modulation idea presented in Autumn Leaves. I completed the quest in 30 to 45 minutes and felt I had gone through a short, sweet, wacky, lackadaisical murder mystery with an interesting cast of characters. So those were my personal experiences, some of the similarities I found. So now let's talk about how I feel about this matter. Generally speaking, it's hard not to look at Brain Dead and Autumn Leaves and think, wow, these are very similar. It doesn't matter who you are or what experience with Fallout you've had, the similarities are there if you play them back to back, and they're well documented by Baron in his post. As I mentioned in his post, Baron believes Bethesda drew inspiration from his mod, but he doesn't accuse them of stealing or call for their heads like a lot of the community is doing right now. When it comes to these kinds of situations, I tend to lean towards being skeptical of the big scandal or conspiracy because most of the time it's just not true. I see this as a correlation-causation fallacy that the community hate train seems to be riding on. Just because similarities exist does not mean that Bethesda copied them, drew inspiration from them, or even heard of Autumn Leaves before making Brain Dead in Far Harbor. Unless we get some juicy behind-the-scenes emails or a Keemstar Skype interview from a Bethesda designer saying, yeah, we copied it, the jury is out. At the absolute worst, Bethesda blatantly copied this, repackaged it, and sold it under a $25 DLC as a quest. Another possibility is that Bethesda played Autumn Leaves, drew a lot of inspiration from it, and just failed to credit the mod creator for his work. But we also have the same possibility that Pete Hines claims, which is it's a complete coincidence. The idea that two different teams of creative people came up with similar ideas independently from one another. It's not like this group of ideas, a vault underground with only robots in it with a murder mystery, is that original in the Fallout universe with the lore and the IP and all of the established facts that we have about this universe. That's not just crazy. It's not crazy to think that two separate teams couldn't have come up with similar ideas in this fashion. Again, I tend to lean towards the possibility with the least amount of logical leaps and assumptions, and I'm definitely not here to say Bethesda is innocent because I don't know. None of us do. I don't think we have enough to prove them guilty at this point. It's just too easy to hop onto this Bethesda hate train because of PS4 mods, Workshop DLC, and other reasons, and I think that's exactly what's happening right now. I'm just asking you guys, the ones watching this video after listening to the facts and the evidence, what we have so far, what is actually true, don't stoop to that level. Treat these situations as independent from one another and judge them based on their individual circumstances. If you don't have a very positive opinion of Bethesda right now, that's totally fine. They've given you several reasons to kind of be in that mindset at this moment in time, but don't attribute that to a separate situation that has nothing to do with that. Overall, the best thing to come out of this is Baron's open-ended questions, which are really insightful. He asked some great questions, like should modders get industry recognition or compensation, and could paid content and free creation be managed together at some point? I think these are important discussion pieces moving forward as mods have become a centerpiece in Bethesda games after their console debut. Nearly everyone has mods now, and that's great, but we do need to figure out some of the monetization of it, who should get credit for it, and who should get compensated. All right, guys, those were my opinions on the situation. I'd like to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this whole thing? Do you think Bethesda's guilty or innocent until proven so? Share what you're thinking in the comments below. All right, guys, today I shared my thoughts on the Bethesda mod stealing situation. Next time we will cover more Fallout on my channel, so stay tuned for Fallout 4 tips and tricks videos. If you learned something new or enjoyed this video, remember to hit that like button. I would really appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe for DLC coverage, my survival mode live streams, Bethesda.net mods, and general tips and tricks videos. Talk to you guys next time. Peace.